Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. This is Andrew DiStefano from Putnam County Crime Analysis. Today, we don't have any politics, thank God. The last couple of videos have been politics. Um, we're actually doing a little bit of analysis. It's an analysis based upon a analysis. How did someone arrive at their conclusion? You know, and I'm going to get right to it. There's always been this claim in Putnam County. It was used a lot by a former sheriff, who I'm sure we always know, and he always said that Putnam County was the safest county, either in New York, in America, in the world, in the universe, the solar system. I mean, Putnam County was the safest county. I understand a lot of times that term is used colloquially because we are a safe county. That's why we move here. We don't have any metropolises. We don't have any cities. And that's why for the most part, our crime is organically low. It's naturally low, particularly as major police departments measure crime by the 7 majors, they call them: murder, rape, robbery, aggravated assault, etc. These things really don't happen much in Putnam County. So our crime is organically low, and thankfully for that, I mean, I live here. My family lives here. Our home values are tied to being safe and good school districts. It's the first thing they ask when you go to sell your home: how are the schools? So I always wondered, but I would ask the former sheriff once in a while, what are you basing this claim? Safest county, because you have to remember something. I come from not only a background as a retired New York City police captain, but for the last decade, I've been studying advanced crime analysis. So that when someone says something, really, it piques my interest. But where'd you get that from? On what are you basing that? And I understand a lot of times law enforcement, they take credit for things that they have nothing to do with. It happens in the NYPD as well. I remember getting up at CompStat, that when you have your data-driven policing model, the best in the world, you would get up there and you would hear other captains, talk about how low the crime was for the period. And then the chief would interject and say, well, Captain, not for nothing, you had like a 3-foot snowstorm. You had a 2-foot snowstorm. And it's well known that snowstorms knock out street crime. It just does. But it would be funny to watch anyways. Interesting dynamic, no matter how many times guys get caught, they still did it. But I always found that to be an interesting dichotomy, because the Putnam County Sheriff's Department is not a data-driven agency. It wasn't under the former at the time, and it's not now. They don't. It's not a data-driven agency as it's known to, as data-driven policing is known to be. There's no CompStat sessions. There's nothing like that going on. And it's a shame. It really should be. Because it doesn't matter the size of the department. It doesn't matter how many crimes you have. CompStat is it's a data-driven model based upon what your numbers are. CompStat adjusts to you, not the other one. But in any event, I always found the safest claim, the safest county claim, to be a dubious one. And as I said, I know it's colloquial a lot of times. But given my background in advanced crime analysis and studying this stuff on the master's and PhD level, and having, postgraduate certificates in this stuff, it did pique my interest, because about a month and a half ago, a magazine it was a magazine in Missouri, wrote an article about the safest counties in the United States, and he looked at about over 4,000 counties, and they said that Putnam County, New York, was the 8th safest county in the United States. And, listen, of course, I'm happy about that. I live here. My family lives here. My home values are tied to that statement. So I thought it was a great thing. I didn't think much of it, because I know that you don't rank counties like that, but still, it sounded nice. Somebody did pique my interest, because one time, I guess about a week ago, somebody had asked me, said, well, what are they basing that on? Like, what's the measure? And I said, something? I don't know. I don't know, but I'm going to find out. I'm going to look at this study and find out, what is this about? Is this legit? Is it not? The first thing that jumped off the page as a red flag was that out of the top 25 safest counties in America, 10 of them, 10 are from New York. And New York is having serious crime problems. And 10 out of the 25 are not only from New York, but here in our area, not just Putnam. We're talking Queens. You're talking Staten Island, Nassau County, number one. Brooklyn is in there. It's in one of the top. So I thought it's something is wrong here. Come on, 10 out of 25 from New York State. New York State's not doing too well in terms of crime. So I wanted to know, what were the matrices? What are the matrices? What did they look at? What are the metrics? What are the parameters? How did they move the measurements? Okay. So at this time, I'm going to invite you into my studio, and that's what it's called. I'm new on StreamYard, so you got to forgive the video quality is not too great. But this is the article. This is what they're talking about. This is the article that came out claiming that Putnam County is the 8th safest county in the United States. And out of all the measures, out of all the matrices that they used, and there's about 100 of them. So figure 100% of the matrices that they used, 8.5%, say 8% of that study had anything to do with public safety, had anything to do with law enforcement. So less than 9% of the study had anything whatsoever to do with policing or police work. And I found that interesting because it wasn't just in Putnam, it was in other municipalities also. But my focus is Putnam. Initially, the Putnam County Sheriff's Department jumped right up and took full credit for this and said, well, we're proud of, we're responsible for this, and we're not going to stop. We're not satisfied at being number 8. We're going to go right to number 1. Well, common sense would dictate that if you want to go from number 8 to number 7 to number 6 to number 1, you have to look at what are the measures? What are they basing this on? Then you can improve your performance, right? That's what are they talking about? Then you can improve your performance from that. That just makes sense. So I looked at their study and I went through their numbers. These are the factors that they used to determine that Putnam County is the 8th safest county in the United States. This: population health, 14%. DEI, equity, 12%. Educational equity, health equity, income equity, and social equity. DEI made up 12% of this 8th safest county thing, okay? Education, 12%. Economy, 11%. Do we see policing anywhere here? All right. Anywhere in our future? Housing, 9%. Food and nutrition, 8%. Environment, 8%. Public safety, 8.46%. So out of this whole study, this had almost nothing to do with policing. When we say Putnam County is the 8th safest county in America, it had almost nothing to do with policing. It had to do with everything else, everything I'm telling you. Less than 9% of the study involved public safety. Now, within public safety, they talked about crime, injuries, and public safety capacity. And I'm going to explain that in a minute because this is going to get even worse news for law enforcement here. In terms of this, it's not bad news for law enforcement, but anyone taking credit for this 8th safest county thing, it's nonsense. Community vitality, 7.62%. Infrastructure, 7.5%. Transportation. Okay. So as I said, out of the 100% of all the matrices that they looked at, 8% of that study had anything to do with law enforcement. So law enforcement, had nothing to do with this 8.5%. But let's look at what they actually said. Okay. I just went through it. Now you have to understand, safety is a relative term. Safety is a relative term. I go to Manhattan, I feel safe. I have friends here in Putnam County. They go to Manhattan sometimes, only when they have to, and they don't feel safe. Again, it's a relative term. But when they measured almost 100 matrices, 100 measures, so you take 100% of them. I'm going to keep saying this. 8% of that, only 8% involved the police department. But and I'm saying that because the sheriff's department jumped right up and said, they took credit for that. They took credit for it. And now we see that policing has almost nothing to do with this eighth safest county thing. They're talking about all these other factors. Now, what they did was they looked at crime, they looked at crash fatalities, and then they looked at these other things. Now, just real quick, I'm going to go through it quick because it's boring stuff. They used this magazine in Missouri used UCR reports, UCR numbers to arrive at their conclusion that Putnam is the eighth safest county. You absolutely do not use UCR numbers to rank your jurisdiction. You don't do it. The UCR is made up of what's called the 7 majors. It's actually 8 major crimes, but it's the 7 majors. And please understand that Putnam County is organically low in these numbers. We're talking about murder, rape, robbery, aggravated assault, burglary, GLA, which is grand larceny auto, grand larceny, and arson. These numbers are organically low in Putnam County. That's why we move here, right? We don't have major metropolises. We don't have cities. That's why we move here. But the UCR system, these numbers are only raw data. They're data before it's analyzed. So you don't use those as a measuring stick for anything. Yet this magazine did. They used it, as their full measure of this 8%. That's what they used, UCR numbers, and you don't do that. So I'm going to give you a couple of quotes, and you can guess who said it. Quote, "The FBI has a long-standing policy against ranking participating law enforcement agencies and jurisdictions on the basis of UCR crime data alone. Closely discourages data users against using rankings to evaluate counties on the effectiveness of their law enforcement agency." In other words, you don't use UCR numbers to evaluate your what this Missouri magazine did. Now, where did I get this? This is from the FBI's own website. I didn't make this up. That's from the FBI's own website. You don't use this type of analysis. This magazine did. Okay. So, again, I'm sticking only right now with this 8% of the study that the magazine used. As part of this 8%, they talked about crime, which I just discussed. They talked about vehicle crash fatalities. We don't have any. Thankfully, when we have a crash fatality, it makes the local newspapers. And thankfully for that, we don't have those, the major speedways. We don't have those, people's like major highways and things like that. We have 84 coming through, but we don't have, the major congestion where you a lot of times that's how, and commercial trucking and stuff. That's where you come up with a lot of crash fatalities. We just don't have that. But also, as part of this 8%, even that 8% law enforcement has very little to do with, because part of that 8% was public safety professionals in population. In other words, as part of the 8th safest county is the fact that a lot of cops and firefighters live in Putnam County. Like, what does that have to do with the sheriff's department? Per capita spending on health and emergency services. What does that have to do with the sheriff's department? Population living close to emergency facilities. What does that have to do with law enforcement? Anything. I mean, and these are, I'm saying the sheriff's department because I live in Putnam County, but you can apply this to Nassau. You can apply this to Queens, to Brooklyn, to Staten Island, because they were all part of that top 25. All right. Now, so I'm going to close it with this, but I got another piece of bad news with this study. Not only was 92% of the study of the 8th safest county, 92% of that had nothing to do with policing All right. And it's right there. You saw it. It's right there. In addition to that, we're going to go real quick to the end of the study. And if you could just stick with me for a second, because as I said, they used UCR data, which is you're not supposed to do. I said that a long time ago. I'm saying it now. You don't use UCR to rank jurisdictions against each other. However, look at this. The UCR data that they did use, those raw numbers they did use, it's from 2014. Those are 10 years old. It's right there. Look at it. It's slide 16. It's under public safety, crime. It's 2014. It's right there. The vehicle crash fatality rates that they took credit for, that's from 2020 and 2021. These numbers are old. These numbers are like ancient old. I don't know where this magazine got off making this study and calling it a study, but this is somebody should have read this thing before they came out and started to take credit for this, and including the magazine. They should not have written an article. It's right in there. So in any event, this has been Putnam County Police data. To the one person who asked me, what is their measure? How did they arrive at that conclusion that we're the 8th safest county? Thanks for asking me, because I never would have done this otherwise. You have a great night, and hasta la próxima.